made up of pillboxes and linked anti-tank obstacles. At the heart of the defences was the GHQ line, covering London and the industrial Midlands, on which all of Britain's anti-tank guns were sighted. Later, a less wasteful and more flexible strategy was adopted. Mobile infantry formations were established on the coast, and the emphasis on lengthy defence lines was replaced by the fortification of key road junctions and strategic points. If the worst happened and Britain were invaded, every available able-bodied man was expected to join in the fight. The local defence volunteers, the part-time force later renamed the Home Guard, had by now over 250,000 men, but was pitifully short of weapons. Few expected that against the seasoned veterans of the German army it would stand much of a chance. Nevertheless, the force could play a useful role by relieving the regulars of the more mundane tasks of manning minor roadblocks and doing local guard duties. In anticipation of the battles to come, 127,000 civilians were evacuated from the east coast, and another 80,000 moved from the Kentish coast. Plans were already being laid to bomb the invasion beaches with poisoned gas, and experiments were carried out with underwater fuel pipelines, which would set the sea and the beaches ablaze as the German invasion flotilla approached. British planners knew that any German invasion must be preceded by a massive air assault. The RAF strategy would be to conserve its fighters as an effective force, no matter what the provocation. Every raid must be met with just enough strength to deflect the raiders from their target and perhaps destroy some bombers, but no more. In this, Britain's most important asset would be its highly secret radar defense system. The radar stations of Chain Home stretched from the north of Scotland to the westernmost tip of Wales. The system was capable of detecting aircraft to a range of 120 miles. However, it could not detect low-flying intruders. To fill the gap, stations operating on a shorter wavelength were added to the system. Chain Home Low could detect aircraft up to a distance of 50 miles. Whenever a radar station or group of stations detected aircraft approaching the British coast, the information was passed directly to Fighter Command headquarters at Bentley Priory. At Fighter Command, the job of evaluating radar reports, estimating ranges, and deciding whether detected aircraft were friendly or hostile was done in a filter room, staffed mainly by members of the Women's Auxiliary Air Force. There, counters representing enemy and friendly aircraft were moved around a giant plotting table. The filtered information was passed next door to the Fighter Command Operations Room, and there, an identical plotting table was updated, and a decision was taken about which fighter groups were to be called in to the defence. Britain was divided into 4 Fighter Command groups. 13 Group in the north, its headquarters at Newcastle. 12 Group in the Midlands, commanded from Watnall. 10 Group was in the southwest, with its headquarters in Box. And 11 Group, the group likely to take the brunt of German attacks, was in the southeast, its headquarters at Uxbridge. Every group headquarters had its own operations room, its plotting table updated minute by minute with information from Bentley Priory. A duty controller decided which of the sector stations under his group's command should meet the raid and how many fighters should intercept. On orders from the group controller, the sector station's fighters were brought to a state of readiness or scrambled for an interception. In the sector operations room, plotters tracked not only the course of enemy raiders, but also the positions of intercepting RAF squadrons. While inland of the radar net, these were known by means of a system called huff-duff, or pipsqueak, in which radio signals, automatically emitted by the fighters, were tracked by the sector station. The sector controller could then direct the leader of each fighter squadron to his target, giving by radio the enemy's position, height, course, and estimated numbers. Once enemy raiders had crossed the British coast, they could no longer be tracked by radar, and technology gave way to the eyes and ears of the Observer Corps, a vast civilian organisation made up mostly of part-timers. From posts all over the country, observers, armed with binoculars and a crude direction finder, reported the course, position and identity of all aircraft within their area. On cloudy days, all this had to be judged from the sound of aircraft engines alone. Observer reports were passed to the Corps' own filter centre at Horsham, and from there to Fighter Command Group and Sector Operations Rooms. Britain's air defence network was meant to ensure that RAF aircraft would have no need to fly wasteful standing patrols in the hope of catching sight of an enemy. Whenever the fighters flew, they would fly to combat. Fighter Command's entire strategy depended upon the proper functioning of this new and relatively untried system. In June 1940, no one could tell how such a complex machine would fare in the chaos of an all-out battle. It was Air Chief Marshall Sir Hugh Dowding who had devised Fighter Command's defensive strategy for the Battle of Britain. Dowding had been appointed Chief of Fighter Command on its creation in 1936. He was the man responsible for the RAF's decision to opt for metal monoplane fighters, and he had quickly seen the promise of radar. He went on to create the network of filter and operations rooms, observers and controllers that transformed primitive radar into a functional weapon. Once a course of action had been decided upon, Dowding would follow that course without swerving. In the Battle of France, he had already proved his mettle by resisting moves to send more fighters to the continent. By so doing, he antagonized Churchill, but succeeded in saving aircraft that Fighter Command could ill afford to lose. In the Battle of Britain, Dowding's strategy of conserving his fighter strength would again face serious opposition. The battle would be a trial, not only of Dowding's air defence system, but also of his belief in his own policy and his determination to see it through to the end. Air Minister of the Reich and Commander-in-Chief of the Luftwaffe, Hermann Göring, was the man charged by Adolf Hitler with destroying the Royal Air Force and paving the way for an